Great. Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being here, our early risers. My name's Leanne Martin-Fay. I work at the Massachusetts State Treasurer's Office. I work in the Office of Economic Empowerment there, and I run the financial education programs. And it's really my pleasure to be here with all of you and with my colleagues here on this panel. I know most of the panel personally, and I know that they work tirelessly to help families save for college. They are really the mind trust for saving and planning for college and really thinking about solutions for this college debt crisis that we're in. And so really excited to be here, and we'll explore today's topic, encouraging the right level of borrowing with the help of college savings plans. Our first to present this morning will be Parker Cohen. He's our Associate Director of Savings and Financial Capability at CFED here from DC. And he'll be followed by Martha Savory, Director of Public Affairs at Massachusetts Educational Financing Authority, MIFA, and Bob Hildreth, finally, our founder and board chair of Inversant. So we'll start off with Parker, and I believe he has a few slides. He's going to share with us the work he's doing on college savings accounts and telling us how he'll encourage borrowing and help those with college savings plans.
Cool. All right, thank you so much for the introduction. All right, so as Leanne said, my name is Parker Cohen. I'm an Associate Director on the Savings and Financial Capability team at CFED. And if you aren't familiar, so CFED is a national nonprofit organization, and we work in a variety of different ways to enhance the financial lives of low-income Americans and try to help give them opportunities to contribute to an opportunity economy. And so we do this in three main ways. The first is through programmatic. So we push to expand innovative solutions that are going on across the country to help low-income Americans save, build assets, build financial capability skills, attain financial well-being, et cetera. What we also do is drive policy change at both the state and federal level. So we learn about what's going on the ground to inform that. And we also do research to inform that work as well, applied research on the financial lives of low-income Americans. And finally, we have what we call a field engagement team that supports all the actors across the country who are doing this work and all the different organizations. We try and give them opportunities to connect with each other, organize advocacy efforts, and learn from the great work that's going on in the community. So what am I going to talk about today? So first of all, I want to give you a little bit of an introduction as to why is match savings a possible solution to help with student debt and to help low-income students in particular think about the right level of borrowing and what types of debt to incur. And I'm going to talk about individual development accounts, which is probably the oldest match savings tool that can help do this, and provide some examples of how this is going on in the field. I'll also talk about children's savings accounts. We'll hear more about those from Bob in a bit in the work that they're doing in Massachusetts. And just generally talk about how these different models, when working with higher education, can really help low-income students as they are making these critical financial decisions, like how much debt do I take on, and other really key decisions that come along when you're going to higher education. Okay, so you all are really familiar with this problem. So we know that low-income students are less likely to persist in and complete school. They graduate with more debt on average, and they also may receive fewer supports when making key financial decisions. This part is really important for our conversation today, because if you have less information and less of a support system, it's really hard to make really difficult decisions around things like borrowing and how much debt do I incur. The slides got a little wonky here, so forgive me if they run off the screen. So match savings can really be part of the solution. So as I mentioned, individual development accounts, which I'll define in just a second, are where low-income students can save for higher education expenses, and they get that savings matched, sometimes at a rate of 8 to 1, making it more likely that they get their need met for educational expenses, and also less likely to incur debt. Children's savings accounts are where families can really build the college-going expectation and also save money for going to college. And there's also a really big educational component there that can really help families think through different decisions around how to pay for college. Okay, so some key elements, individual development accounts, so savings over a period of time. The savings accounts are withdrawal limited, so you put the money in, but you can't take it out until you're either exiting the program when you don't get a match, or when you're paying for your tuition or fees, and then you get the match at the same time. So it's kind of like a retirement account where it's not intended for you to take it out when you want. You also get financial education, case management, and other supports throughout, and this is really a critical piece here. So when this product is used with higher education, it can really help folks think through the key financial decisions at that time. I want to highlight one example of how this is working really successfully in a four-year institution model. So there's an organization called Earn to Learn out of Arizona. They're a financial capability scholarship model, and what they do is they use a federal program. They get these grants to match the savings of low-income students that are going into higher education institutions in Arizona, the 3 major universities, and they support students. They start engaging them when they're in high school and when they're filling out the FAFSA, all the way through their higher education experience. So all 4 years, they give the students opportunities to match savings, and they're also engaged in these wraparound services, and this is where so many of the key discussions happen. And they can really help students think through how much debt are you taking on? What is your gap and unmet need? You have Pell Grants already. You can get this match savings. What's left over, and do you need to take on debt for that? And so the way this works is that students save $500 a year, and they get matched at a rate of 8 to 1 through a combination of the university's scholarship funds, this federal match savings program, so they get a total of $4,500 towards their education. This makes a really big dent in their that gap and unmet need. And so what we're seeing here is actually some really amazing results. So what's not on the slide, because it's not really official yet, in the first cohorts of students are going to graduate this spring. But what we're seeing is that these students are taking on almost no debt, which is really incredible. And what's even more incredible is that they're retaining at a rate over 90%, and their overall persistence rate is 95%, which is really high for any population, but especially high for Pell eligible students, and these students are all Pell eligible. So this program that provides a lot of support starting in senior year of high school and going all the way through, matching students' saving and also engaging them in financial discussions the whole time, kind of a different model of financial education than we're used to, but it's yielding really exciting results. And so it's something that we're really watching and seeing if we can expand this to other places to help influence the level of borrowing, the amount of debt that low-income students take on. And I want to give a brief overview of children's savings accounts as well. So we're going to hear from Bob in a minute, but CSAs help low-income families, children's savings accounts, by building that college-going expectation. So kids from more affluent households are told from a very early age you're going to school, and it's just understood. But when that doesn't exist, having this children's savings account program can really help that. And of course, you can build savings for college through it as well. So CSAs are long-term savings programs. They're like IDA, individual development accounts. They're really only designed for the express purpose of higher education expenses. They're coupled typically with financial education services throughout a child's educational experience. So if they start in kindergarten, that financial education can start really young. Again, the accounts are withdrawal restricted, just like a retirement account. So they work by, children open an account with their families, they grow savings, they get financial education, and they are able to practice that financial education, which is what we know really makes financial education work, when it's experiential and when you can actively practice what you're learning. And so there are lots of opportunities throughout, the educational experience of these children where they and their families can really learn about debt, about borrowing, how to use what they've saved to pay for college, what the gap is, how to fill out the FAFSA, how to fill that gap, and help find out what the right level of borrowing is for them. So of course, they attend college and graduate. And so we know that children with a college savings account of even $500 or less are more than 4 times likely to graduate than kids that don't. So the impact is, low to moderate income children with just a little bit amount of savings are 3 times more likely to attend, 4 times more likely to graduate. We don't have too much data on the level of debt that the children who go through CSAs have, but the many opportunities presented to talk about this, since it's a financial education program starting very young in many cases, can lead to better decisions. So, again, data has shown that it increases the expectation of families going to college, improves the socio-emotional development of young children, and actually reduces depression in their families. We've seen strong links between reductions in maternal depression when you have a children's savings account, which makes a lot of sense. When you're under financial stress, it's leads to physical and mental stress. And so helping to reduce that and giving you a plan for how you're going to pay for your children's future is really helpful. So there are CSAs all over the country, including, of course, here in Massachusetts. So here's a map that shows this, and we've got several resources available that on CFED's website that are very helpful if you're interested in learning more about CSAs. And also the Campaign for Every Kid's Future, where we're trying to help 1.4 million children have open accounts by 2020. And we're well on our way towards that goal through the work of folks across the country like you're seeing here in Boston. Great, so I think my time's about up, so I'm gonna turn it back over to Leanne. So thank you.
Thank you, Parker.
Yeah.
I noticed Massachusetts has quite a bit of activity going on
Yes.
in college savings accounts. The state treasurer's office is actually working on a college savings account program, and the second largest city in Massachusetts, which is Worcester, and we're really excited to say we're working alongside MIFA and working hard to provide every kindergartner with $50 to open their college savings account, and hopefully it'll go statewide after our 3-year pilot program. And I'd like to segue to a few questions for Parker, but I'd like the whole panel to chime in if you feel that you can. My first question for you, Parker, is what do you see as the future of using financial capability approaches like match savings to help students reduce their debt?
Yeah, so I think there's a really big opportunity here to build off of the efforts that I described on the slide to really rethink how we do needs-based aid in this country and how we think about things like debt. So I didn't even mention financial coaching, which is a really emerging program in the field that's been going on for several years now, but a lot of financial coaching programs have been successfully integrated into community college and 4-year college settings. So they help students think about the financial goals that they want to attain and work together to outline how you're going to get there. And really opening up these conversations between students, educational institutions, incorporating parents into the discussion, and everything else will really increase the transparency here and help people think critically about debt. And And so when you have a match savings program like the Earn to Learn one I described, or a children's savings account program where you're actively engaged in savings, and these sorts of discussions are layered on top of it. So you're already saving towards the goal of higher education, and now you can, get some financial coaching or some resources about borrowing, and that can be, immensely helpful, because so often, I know in my case, I made, these financial decisions about debt without really having any idea what the realm of possibilities were out there. So these programs really offer really good opportunities for engagement.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I might make it.
Yeah.
And Bob, thank you.
Tuesday, I was visiting with the AAU, American Association of Universities, which is the premier association of universities in the United States. And they had no knowledge of CSAs. They had no knowledge of CFED. I think their place is close. They're New York Avenue Northwest. Is that fairly close?
Yeah, like a few blocks.
A few blocks. So they hadn't. There's probably at least 5 bills before Congress that have things to do with CSA. Mentioned Senator Coons. He has a bill which sets up a pilot project where states would apply RFPs to get programs that would be supported with federal dollars. They didn't know about it. At Inversant, we think that linking colleges to the CSA effort's critical. So we have something called the Compact Scholarship with 6 colleges in Eastern Massachusetts, which says if a family makes its savings goal and attends the savings meetings, and the child gets into, let's say, University of Lowell, then University of Lowell has a special scholarship recognizing the CSA effort. And I think that's the direction we have to go in.
Thank you, Bob. Does anyone else have any thoughts around, the role of higher education institutions to help provide financial capability for students, or involving IDAs as well for families?
So I think what I would just echo what both other panelists have said here, and that's that it can't happen alone. And I think whether it's higher education institutions, whether it's community-based organizations, I think what we've all learned, having worked in this space for such a long time, is that just creating the opportunity is not enough, and that families really only begin to meet with success when they've had the opportunity to know that option is there for them, but that they're going to be supported in a variety of ways to achieve their savings goal, whatever that is. So I think there is a role to play for colleges and universities, community-based organizations, legislators, state treasurers. So I would just echo what everybody has said.
Yeah, and we know that the amount of money that that students are dropping out over in some cases is it's so sadly so small, and giving folks more opportunities and the engagement piece, as you were mentioning, is just really so critical here, and having trusted community educational voices helping to guide students and families through these financial decisions is so important. And that's what we're seeing more and more in our research, that programs like financial coaching, which are one-on-one relationships over time where trust is built, and it's a mutual mutual accountability relationship is so critical to helping not just students, but low-income individuals overall attain financial goals. And educational institutions have a big stake in this, because when students drop out over financial reasons, or when they're stressed over finances, they can't be as good of students. And getting them to think more about, how can we work with students around financial issues, I think is a really critical challenge for us right now.
Thank you, Parker. I do want to transition to alum Martha to present on the programs that are managed through MIFA for Massachusetts families. And
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming. As Leanne said at the beginning, my name is Martha Savory, and I'm the Director of Public Affairs at MIFA. I have been working at MIFA for the last 10 years, and prior to that, spent many years actually working in the higher education sector. So I'm delighted to be here this morning with Parker and Bob. It's really a passion of mine to talk with families and anyone that's interested in listening to me about the importance of saving for college. And one of the things that I was mentioning before we started talking was that, I think this is really exciting to begin to set the stage for the connection between saving for college and paying for college. And I've been in this space for a very long time, and that connection has not always been a natural connection. And so I think that part of the work that we do every day is to begin to make sure that people understand that those two things have to go together for a family to be able to successfully navigate that paying for college process. MIFA, for those of you that are not here in Massachusetts, is the Massachusetts Educational Financing Authority, and we are a quasi-public agency in Massachusetts, which is a very fancy word for saying that we are not part of the state government, and we actually are not a private entity. We are a quasi-public agency that is a self-financing agency here in Massachusetts. And our charter is actually to help families with access and affordability in achieving that dream of higher education. And we do that in a number of ways. We are the entity in Massachusetts that's responsible for the 2 college savings programs here in Massachusetts, both the 529 plan, which is the U Fund, as well as the Massachusetts prepaid program, tuition program, which is known as the U Plan. And so we started those programs here in Massachusetts and have worked tirelessly over the last 17 or 25 years, actually, with the U Plan, in making sure that families understand that saving for college is a really important vehicle for them in making that pathway. We also have a tremendous outreach program that we provide to families, to college-based, to community-based organization, to school counselors, to our colleagues in the higher education sector, to provide to them training on the multiple ways to save and plan and pay for college. And so we are out in the community constantly, actually, and we do probably about 500 in-person programs in every given year, where we will talk with families about saving for college, we'll talk to them about how to navigate through that college financial aid process, and finally, how do they end up making that decision about how do they pay for college. And that's an important critical component for us, helping families understand what those award letters mean, what is that, how are they gonna really make that real. So my goal today, and what I was tasked with sharing with you, is really the tools that MIFA uses in order to help reach those families. And I have a couple of visuals that I'm going to share with you, but I also really want to begin at kind of level setting for all of you, what we hear families saying. And I think that this is really important. There are 2 really important data points on here that for me resonate with me daily, actually. And the first is that 65% of parents believe that saving too much, and this should not come as any surprise to any of you that are here or my colleagues on the panel, that if they save too much, it will mean it will disqualify them from receiving financial aid. That is the biggest myth, the biggest hurdle that we have to overcome as a community in order to help families understand that saving for college is a really important and very critical piece of the way that they will navigate that pathway to higher education. And I'm going to share with you some ways that we try to do that at MIFA, and by all means, I know that we are not alone in this, but certainly I take ideas from my colleagues every single day about how to make this a really a more impactful way of talking to families. The second is that 52% of families, and this is again another troubling statistic, I guess, believe that when they talk about financial aid, that they don't have to pay that back. And we asked that question. This is all based upon a study that MIFA and Fidelity Investments. Fidelity Investments is MIFA's program manager for the 529 plan, and we have been doing a survey of families about college savings behaviors for the last 10 years, and this data is from the 10th annual study. So that 52%, and I really pushed back on Fidelity to make sure that we asked this question, because it was a broader question a couple of years ago, and I said, well, what do families even think financial aid is? Let's start at asking that question. And so what we know is that they are not even sure that they think financial aid is all grant money, and that, you know, borrowing for college isn't really a part of financial aid. And we can get into the semantics of whether, you know, when they look at that award letter, whether debt is in fact financial aid. But most importantly to me is that families are not making that connection. And then, you know, finally, that 44% of the families that were surveyed believe that if they start saving in high school, that they're going to be okay. And so what we know from that, obviously, is that families need to begin that saving so much earlier. And I have a couple of visuals that will talk about that. You know, I do think that the work that we're doing in Massachusetts, we've done work with Inversant for many years. I'm very, very proud of that work that we have done with them in the community to help educate families that have younger children, or, you know, even starting in middle school or high school. We also this year are launching our program, our Seed MA program, with the State Treasurer's Office, and that program is designed to work with families in the city of Worcester who have children that are kindergarten students. And we are all so excited about the fact that we are going to be able to launch this program with really young children, and anxious to see what the results of that will be. And so when we begin to kind of talk with families about kind of level setting, I always like to begin talking with families, and we do this with families that have young children. So this is also part of our program that we do with on college financing, where we talked last year to 20,000 families across Massachusetts about navigating the college financial aid process and what does that mean for them. We really do begin talking with our families really young about what is financial aid. And we show them this visual and ask them to say, you tell me, what does it look like to you? And the very first thing that they will really focus on is the debt aspect of this. And so when their children get older, and when part of our college financing program is devoted to helping families understand that if that child borrows every single year that they are an undergraduate at the maximum amount that they are allowed to borrow, that they will be graduating, if they remain on a standard repayment plan, which is what we use to really help families understand this, they would be repaying at about $300 a month. And when I look out into those sea of faces, because I do a lot of these programs myself out in the community, the shock value for those families is really quite something. And so we've begun to really share that statistic even earlier with families, so that they can really understand and talk to their children about the real cost of college. It's not just what that net price is that they're looking at, or even that sticker price. It's whatever that cost is, plus whatever years they are borrowing for their child, for, you know, as the student, and then if the parent is borrowing as well. So really trying to help families understand what that looks like. When we talk with younger families, and this is a slide that I know Leanne is very familiar with, we are really beginning to help them see a visual of, if you start early, even with $15 per month, the impact upon a family that does that with kindergarten students, and that's the purple line up here, the impact really can be quite significant. We also talk to families about not getting tied into the belief that they have to save the entire amount. Who can even do that? But really and truly saying to them, what little amount you can save can be impactful for you as a family. It might mean that your child doesn't, have to borrow to buy those books, or they may not have to borrow to get that computer, and that every dollar that you can save can in fact mean that they will have to borrow less. And we continue and continue and continue to make that statement to our families, beginning as young as when we have children involved in or parents involved in our financial education curriculum, begins as early as, newborns. And we do have a curriculum that is designed for families. It's an email curriculum, and it's designed for families based upon the age of the child. And a family signs up for that, and we provide them information that continues to make the saving for college conversation relevant for them over those years. When we begin to talk with families really on the entire age spectrum, but particularly when we get into the middle school years, we focus on those families really to talk in a much harder tone, not harder, but a much more direct tone, I guess, about what does it mean to borrow and why is saving so important. And when we show this family, we show this one visual to families, they will sit up in their chair and all of a sudden begin to understand that saving for college versus borrowing for college really does have an impact in real dollars to them. And so this is a